Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video where today we are going to be going through my Fanatec wheel settings for F124. Yes, the game handling has changed quite a lot this year from previous titles, so it's really important this year that you try and figure out some new wheel settings that work for you. Now, of course, Fanatec wheels have obviously both the in-game settings and the inside the steering wheel settings, so I will be running through all of those today. However, if you're on Thrustmaster, Logitech, or Moser, or anything else, then maybe try out the in-game settings and see if they work for you. Of course, there will be timestamps linked down below if you just want to head over to the Fanatec kind of in their own software part of this video. But just quickly before we dive into this as well, I am using a Fanatec CSL GT DD and a Formula V2.5 rim. If you do want to shop Fanatec products, I have a link down in the description below. At the moment, there seems to be a little bit of shaky stuff going on with their business, so I would honestly suggest maybe avoiding it for the time being. But of course, yeah, if you do want to help support me and you're prepared to take that risk, then there will be a link down in the description below. So if you want to change your settings inside F124, head out of the main menu and head down obviously to settings, rather unsurprisingly. Once you're in that option, then you want to head down to the controls, vibration and force feedback area, where of course if you're on a Fanatec product, it should likely pick up the wheel that you are using as well there. So try and find the right one for you if it hasn't already, but ultimately you're going to be creating your own preset anyway. So if we click over there and we have a look on the options, you can see I've left pretty much all the binds exactly as the game comes with them, just because generally I don't really change them, because I find that EA do a pretty good job with everything like that. So if you want to copy these, go for it, but they should be default inside the game as well. Of course, what we're far more interested in is actually utilizing the force feedback settings inside the game as well. There are actually a lot more settings on this year's game than we have seen in previous titles. Of course, you can head into the calibration, and obviously you can see there we are running an 80% steering rate inside this year's game, and then a 10% brake linearity setting there. You can tweak and change a few more of these, but ultimately the more dead zone linearity or saturation you add, the less kind of precise your wheel's going to feel, just because obviously if you say take 10% off, you only get 90% of kind of the information across 100% of the input that you're putting into your wheel as well then. So yeah, with the exception of brake linearity, which is just because I have a load cell brake pedal, I don't really like to tweak any of these. Now, of course, we all know the handling inside F124 is very different to previous year's games. So the big one that you're going to want to alter first of all is your maximum wheel rotation. In previous games, I have ran 360 degrees. This year's title, I am running 400, and I've also got that keyed in to my Fanatec wheel as well. Ultimately, you want to be running between 10 and 20% higher than you were running inside F123. So for me, it was 360. 10% on top of that is 396, so I put it to 400, and that seems to be what's worked well for me. The wheel damper setting is, of course, actually reduces or limits the amount of strength going through your wheel. So some of you that watch a lot of the videos might hear the wheel in the background sometimes, but ultimately I like having as much information as I can coming through it. So obviously we have that completely turned off, just because I don't want any of kind of those strength, that force feedback be weakened as it comes through the wheel. Pit stop effects, I've got set to 40%. I don't think they do anything at all for me. You can see it's just the scale of the pit stops, controllers and true force wheels only, so that's been left on 40, unless you're using a controller, or I think it's Logitech, isn't it, does true force. So yeah, we don't really need to change that. Off-track effects I've put at 15, simply because I don't really like feeling too much kind of, if I'm on the grass or in a gravel trap, I already know that, and generally I find the gravel traps on the F1 game just rattle your wheel to pieces for no reason at all, so I've left that on 15%. Rumbler strip effects, it's a similar story. The curbs, obviously, on this year's game, you can really attack exit curbs a lot. Obviously, we've been doing some setup guides over on my other channel. There'll be a link to that down in the description below. But obviously, again, you're going to know if you're on the curbs and things like that. So hence why that's down at 25% there. And the on-track effects, I've got to 70. So that is more about the bumps and obviously the circuit as well. So kind of the undulation you know, the camber, the elevation changes and things like that. I obviously want that a lot higher because, of course, if you're looking from T-Cam especially, you can only see what the front half of the car's doing. It's all based on feel, what's going on behind you at the rear, and the same sort of story for the vibration and force feedback strength. I've got that set to 105 inside the game as well there, and of course, obviously, vibration and force feedback on. Ultimately, I find if I put it on 110 originally, and it was rattling around my wheel a bit too much, I would rather run higher strength through Fanatec settings than I would through the game. So we'll take a look over there, and we'll have a look and run through those settings as well. So, taking a look then, obviously, over in the Fanalab settings as well, then you can see, once again, as I mentioned, you've got to make sure that your sensitivity inside the game and on your real wheel matches up. Otherwise, you might turn like this, and the steering wheel inside the game might be completely turned as well then. So, always want those two to line up. So, again, we have set that to 400. The force feedback strength, I've left maxed out 100%. I get all 8 Newton meters of torque from this wheel. It does mean over some bumps, like bumpier circuits like Suzuka, for example, you do get a little bit of chatter from the wheel, but ultimately I find that the extra strength I'd rather have than, you know, kind of dampening that out a little bit and potentially getting less feel through the game. The force feedback scale has been set to peak as well, just because, again, you know, I want those peak torque numbers coming from the wheel as well, and obviously I paid for the boost kit. I want to utilize my boost kit with F1 as well there. The natural damper I have set to 50%, of course. It basically, obviously, a bit like the one inside the game, just kind of smooths out some of the force feedback. I find Fanatec's version than Codemasters or EA's does a slightly better job, so we have left that on 50. Friction and inertia I've disabled completely. I don't really feel the need for either of those inside the game. Ultimately, I don't really find they change much, so that's why they're just switched off, because, you know, it is those little things in the background that maybe if I have those running, that's going to be removing some of the other data that comes through the wheel as well. The FFB interpolation filter, of course, that is just how often data is being sent. I've left that at 11. I think I've left that on 11 on everything I've done on this game. I've never noticed much difference with it. And then the force effect intensity, we have got maxed out to 100 as well there. The force effect strength I've set to 110, so again, pretty similar to the levels you'll see inside the game, but it just means, obviously, when I'm steering the wheel through the corners, it does feel a little bit heavier. I would always rather have a slightly heavier steering wheel, just because it kind of gives you more feedback, and I personally find that it actually improves my consistency, because, of course, you know, it's not that you get to a high-speed corner and you can just go like that. You know, you really have to make sure that you're fighting with the car. It is constantly trying to pull back to the center, and obviously, yeah, it allows me a little bit more kind of feedback and feel of what the car is doing underneath me. The spring effect and the damper effect, again, I have left at 100. Of course, they once again just affect, you know, obviously how much, you know, kind of feedback is coming through the wheel, but ultimately I haven't really found they do too much of a difference either. And of course, again, because I am on a load cell brake pedal kit, I like running my brake force on 40. I'm pretty certain I run it on 40 on every single game I've ever played, just because that's how much I like kind of the brake pedal feel as well. Of course, that doesn't really affect how things handle in the game. It's more actually about how hard your brake pedal is, because obviously if you're on a load cell pedal, so, for example, you know, basic pedals that you might get, they're just based on how much movement the pedal's done. Load cell pedals are actually based on how much pressure you're putting through the pedal instead. So it is a very, very different driving experience. If you haven't got a load cell pedal, would highly recommend it. It is an absolute game changer as well there. And yeah, I've just always enjoyed 40%. I feel it provides a good balance as well. But there we are then. My force feedback settings inside F124. Obviously, there is rumour and speculation that we are going to be seeing another handling model update in the very near future. So if that is the case, I will do another one of these videos as well. And if you're watching this months after it's been uploaded, I might make sure there's a link as well in the description below, so you can go check out that newer video if that has been the case. But thank you all so much for watching. Oh, quickly as well, before I forget, camera settings, because I will get asked about those. I never bother changing them. I don't find it makes much difference. So if you want to know my camera settings, they're completely default inside the game. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please do make sure to leave a like, get yourself subscribed, and yeah, we'll be back very soon with more F124 content.